Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. Right before I kicked the bucket, my wife dropped a bombshell. She confessed that all those years, the person she truly loved was my brother. The reason he had donated a kidney to her. So when I got a second chance at life, I steered clear of my wife and married the stuck-up flirt she'd always complained about in my previous life. Now filled with regret, she's on her knees begging me to forgive her. I just chuckled and said, "Well, I won't be donating a kidney to you this time around." When I opened my eyes, I found myself reborn in my second year of university. I was still trying to process everything when my phone buzzed with a message from Mina. "After school tonight, can you help me get Cho to go see a movie?" I frowned. Mina was my wife in my previous life, and I always believed we had many years of love ahead of us. But right before I died, she dropped a bombshell. The one she truly loved all along was my brother. "I can't. I have things to do." "Figure it out yourself," I replied. I had no desire to get involved with her anymore since fate had granted me a second chance. This time I would live for myself. After I calmed down, I looked around the classroom. Most of the faces were unfamiliar, except for Hannah, who sat beside me. I remembered that on the first day of school, I had helped Hannah by fending off two guys who were bothering her, and I also helped carry her luggage to the dorm. Since then, we had a good relationship. She was a sweet girl. Since we were in the same class, she often brought me breakfast, saved me a seat, and occasionally invited me to study together at the library. But Mina had always disliked Hannah. She had told me many times that Hannah was pretentious and always putting on a show, urging me to stay away from her. In my last life, I had listened to Mina because I liked her. When I ignored Hannah's invitations to the library a few times, she eventually stopped contacting me. "Hannah, how about I treat you to dinner tonight?" I felt a bit guilty. She had been nothing but kind, a genuinely good girl. Hannah was surprised, her mouth slightly agape. "Really? Why the sudden invitation?" I smiled. "No particular reason, just in a good mood and felt like celebrating." "Okay," she agreed, her face lighting up with happiness, her cheeks turning a slight shade of pink. That evening, I took Hannah to a Japanese restaurant near the university. While we ate, Hannah asked, "Are you planning to take the graduate school entrance exam?" In my last life, I had given up on the idea of further studies for Mina, and it was one of my biggest regrets. So without hesitation, I replied, "Yes, I want to get into Shanghai University." Hannah's eyes sparkled with surprise. "Me too. I want to go to Shanghai University as well. We can prepare together and keep each other on track." "Sounds great," I said, genuinely excited. At that moment, Mina and my brother walked into the restaurant. When Mina saw me with Hannah, she frowned deeply. She quickly strode over to us. "Sio, is this what you meant by having plans? Your plan was to have dinner with." Her tone was sharp. When I used to like Mina, everything about her seemed charming, even her somewhat spoiled personality. I had thought it was cute, but now that I didn't like her anymore, her aggressive tone irritated me. "So what if it is? Weren't you planning to go watch a movie with my brother? I'm not interfering with your plans. Why can't I have dinner with a friend?" I shot back, my tone just as harsh. Mina looked at me wide-eyed, as if she couldn't believe I would talk to her like that. I didn't care. After speaking, I grabbed Hannah's hand and walked out. Since we had already finished eating, my brother and I were heading out now. As soon as we stepped outside, my brother chased after us. "See what?" my brother said, clearly anxious. "Why did you talk to Mina like that? Don't you like her? Go make things right." My brother was always the gentle type, constantly trying to bring Mina and me together. "Brother," I said, meeting his gaze, "Mina has always liked you. Besides, I don't like her anymore." I pulled Hannah in front of me. "I like Hannah now, so I won't be involved with Mina anymore." Before my brother could respond, Mina came storming out. She lifted her chin and stared at me, clearly waiting for me to apologize. I brushed past her, Hannah trailing silently behind me as we walked back to school. Her head was down, a picture of quiet dejection. A pang of guilt nipped at me. "Hannah, I'm sorry for using you as a human shield back there," I offered by way of explanation. She spoke slowly. "So you said you don't like Mina anymore? Is that true?" "Absolutely," I confirmed, nodding firmly. I will never like her again. The further I am from her orbit, the better. She seemed to gather her courage, lifting her head, her pale face tinged with a delicate pink. Then she began. Can I like you? I froze. Hannah quietly pretty with that delicate, almost fragile beauty. Small and gentle, the kind of person you instinctively wanted to protect. Had she always liked me? Had my past self, in his infinite wisdom, broken her heart? The thought was surprisingly unsettling. I patted her head reassuringly. Of course you can, Hannah. You're a wonderful girl, and it's an honor to be liked by you. But, I added, striking a more serious tone, I still need some time to sort things out. Can you wait for me? Yes, she breathed, nodding eagerly, her eyes downcast again. Honestly, she was ridiculously adorable. Cut to a week later, and Mina suddenly materializes looking completely different. Anxious, almost desperate. She tried to drag me out of class. See, come out. We need to talk. The classroom was buzzing, everyone watching with undisguised interest. I had no choice but to step outside. What do you want? I asked, my expression carefully neutral. I need to talk to you, she stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. If it's not important, I'm going back, I said coldly. And don't come to my classroom again. It's inappropriate. I turned to leave. See, she called after me. Do you want to be with me, huh? I genuinely thought. I thought I'd misheard what she just said. Seeing my confusion, she repeated. You've always liked me, haven't you? Let's be together. I had no idea what was going on in her head, but I responded coolly. Yes, I did like you, but I don't anymore. Weren't you always hung up on my brother? Why are you coming to me instead of him? Are you trying to use me to get to him again? I'm not. She trailed off, flustered. I'm not getting together with you, Mina, I stated flatly. Let's just pretend we never knew each other. Don't even say hi if we bump into each other. And with that, I went back to class, leaving her standing there, head bowed, lost in thought. But that wasn't the end of it. After that little encounter, I kept running into her everywhere. The cafeteria, the supermarket, even outside the boys' dormitory. It was driving me absolutely bonkers. Finally, I snapped. I grabbed her arm and pulled her aside. Enough. I've already told you I don't like you anymore. You like my brother, go after him. Why are you bothering me? Si-woo, she said, her eyes filled with a strange curiosity. Did you come back too? What could it be? Had Mina also been reborn? I was shocked to my core, but I kept my face impassive. I don't know what you're talking about. Just stay away from me. Hearing my non-committal answer, a look of visible relief washed over her face. Interesting. Oh right, I said, snapping my fingers. I'm not paying your rent anymore. If you want to keep living there, you'll have to cover it yourself. It had completely slipped my mind. Shortly after we started college, Mina had spun a sob story about her awful roommates and how they were ostracizing her. Being the magnanimous idiot I was back then, I'd forked over 1,500 yen every month for a studio apartment off campus. My monthly allowance was only 3,000 yen, and I was blowing more than half of it on her. Sometimes I even had to beg my parents for extra cash.
Mina frose.
I knew her living expenses were only 1,800 yen a month, enough to scrape by maybe, but definitely not enough for rent. Si-woo, how can you treat me like this? Her voice was sharp. And why shouldn't I? I retorted, genuinely annoyed. Before, when I liked you, I was willing to throw money at you, even though you didn't give a damn about me. But now that I don't like you, I wouldn't give you a single cent, got it? Tears welled up in her eyes. After a moment of strained silence, she spat out. Si-woo, you'll regret treating me this way. Regret? I would regret it? Please. In our previous life, after we got married, I was the dutiful husband, handling all the housework, paying all the bills. But when I got sick, because, I only had one kidney, Mina never even visited me. Not once. It wasn't until I was on my deathbed that she finally confessed her undying love for my brother. She could have taken that little nugget of information to her grave. But no, she chose to let me die knowing the truth, making my decades of devotion feel like some cosmic joke. I died with zero peace of mind. I guess she hated me for that. Ping, her in a loveless marriage for over a decade, hated me so much she couldn't even let me have a peaceful death. How utterly ironic. In my past life, I treated her like a goddess, and all I got in return were cold expressions and imperious commands. But now, after a few harsh words, she was suddenly overflowing with emotions. Too little, too late. Just then my phone rang. It was my brother. See, Mom and Dad just called. They said Mina's father had a stroke and is in the hospital. He needs someone to take care of him. I remembered this. It had happened in our past life too. Back then, both my brother and I were so concerned about Mina that we didn't even tell her. I took a 2-week leave from school to play nurse to her father. Just thinking about Mina's parents made my blood boil. Those two always treated me like some kind of cash cow. No matter how much I did for them, they never showed me an ounce of respect. I'd spent a fortune on gifts for them every holiday, and they'd always sniff at them, complaining they weren't expensive enough. Of course, all my money was going to Mina. I wasn't some trust fund baby. By middle age, I was broke. And when I got sick, my parents had to foot the bill. I spoke slowly and deliberately. Brother, if Mina's father is sick, let her mother call her. We don't need to get involved. But no buts, I interrupted. I told you I don't like her anymore. I knew my brother had always seen Mina as a little sister, and since I was smitten with her back then, he'd taken her under his wing too. Mina, hearing her name, turned towards us. Your father had a stroke, I said flatly. She seemed to just register the information, and without a word she hurried off. In our past life, she hadn't found out until her father had already been discharged. She stopped abruptly, turned back, bit her lip and said, "So, come home with me." "No," I said firmly. Her eyes flickered with disappointment and confusion, but she turned and left. For the next 2 weeks, Mina vanished from my radar. She called once trying to hit me up for cash, but I shut that down immediately. I also put a call into my brother, instructing him to do the same. He was a bit confused by my sudden coldness towards Mina, but being the dutiful sibling, he reluctantly agreed. Those 2 weeks were pleasant. I settled back into the rhythm of university life, actually focusing on my studies for a change. I even started hanging out with Hannah again. We hit up a murder mystery role-playing game and caught a movie. I found myself genuinely enjoying her company. She was sweet, yes, but there was a quiet strength about her that I found incredibly appealing. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she confessed to me again. I grinned and playfully bopped her on the nose. "Silly girl," I teased. "Confessions are supposed to be the guy's job." She looked up at me, a stubborn glint in her eyes. I cleared my throat. "Miss Hannah," I began, "I like you a lot. Would you do me the honor of being my girlfriend?" "I'm willing," she breathed, beaming, and I was just as happy. My affection wasn't completely worthless after all. This lovely girl actually cherished it. "Hannah," I said softly, "thank you." She tilted her head, looking a little confused. "Thank you for liking me," I explained, smiling gently. "I promise I'll treat you well, really well." A couple of weeks later, Mina resurfaced, looking like she'd been dragged through the ringer. I bumped into her in front of the girls' dorm, and she immediately launched into an apology.
"Bill, I'm sorry.
I realize now how much you've done for me." She looked utterly exhausted, probably from taking care of her father in our previous life. After I'd nursed her father back to health, she just casually said thanks. And even that had made my day back then. Thinking about my past self made me cringe. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said coolly. Just then, Hannah emerged from the dorm, looking ready to go somewhere. Seeing me with Mina, she seemed a little apprehensive. I smiled, took Hannah's hand, handed her a cup of milk tea, and walked right past Mina without even a backward glance. "SEO.
Mina Gelid.
Are you dumping me for her? I told you she's just a manipulative little gold digger." She was shouting now, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. People were staring and whispering. Hannah, looking flustered and mortified, stammered, "Why? Why are you saying such awful things about me?" Mina sneered. "Isn't trying to steal someone else's boyfriend the definition of a manipulative gold digger?" Her little outburst left everyone around us slack-jawed.
Mina,
I yelled, stepping in front of Hannah to shield her. "Since when was I your boyfriend? I don't like you. Is that concept too difficult for you to grasp? And how dare you say such a thing about my girlfriend? SEO, you're scolding me over that gold digger." Mina wailed, then turned and ran off, presumably to nurse her wounded pride. Hannah's eyes were red, but she was holding back tears. Any girl would be hurt by such public humiliation. If rumors started swirling, she'd be the target of whispers and pointed fingers everywhere she went. Everyone, I said, raising my voice to address the gawking crowd. That girl you just saw is a neighbor. We grew up together, that's it. There's nothing more between us. She's got the hots for my brother, actually. I have no idea what her little performance was about, but I will not tolerate her slandering my girlfriend. I gave a slight bow to the onlookers. I hope you won't spread any rumors. I'm incredibly lucky to be with my girlfriend, and I won't stand by and watch her get hurt by gossip. All right, bro. Some random guy waiting for his own girlfriend chimed in. With those words, I believe you're not the kind of guy who would abandon someone. Hannah, looking touched, tugged on my hand, her head bowed shyly under the collective scrutiny. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. That very night, Mina took to the university forum and she named Hannah, class of 19, accusing her of, you guessed it, stealing her boyfriend. And because she's apparently a master of photographic manipulation, she uploaded a bunch of old photos of us together. Except my brother was conveniently cropped out of every single one. There were pictures of us shopping, watching movies, eating out, even at an amusement park. Anyone who didn't know better would have assumed we were an item. The student body, ever hungry for gossip, predictably lost their collective minds. The post exploded, becoming the top thread in less than 2 hours, filled with comments ripping into Hannah and me. So she is a gold digger, huh? Stealing someone else's boyfriend? How low can you go? Scumbag guy, shameless girl, they deserve each other. Hannah called me, practically in tears. What are we going to do? Did you ever date her? Hannah, don't worry, I said soothingly. I've never dated Mina, not before and definitely not now. Do you trust me? I trust you, she sniffled. I hung up, my expression colder than an ice sculpture. Mina, I really didn't want to deal with you. After being reborn, I was perfectly willing to let bygones be bygones. But since you insist on poking the bear with your dirty tricks, don't blame me for unleashing the grizzly. I told Hannah to lay low for a couple of days and sat back to watch the fireworks. Once Mina's post had garnered enough attention and juicy comments, I took screenshots of everything. Then I gathered all the original photos along with a meticulously crafted account of my history with Mina, starting from childhood. I even included screenshots of my unanswered or barely answered texts to her. I packaged it all up and posted my own thread. Given the popularity of Mina's post, mine took off like a rocket. Wow, the tables have turned, folks. So, there was another person in those pictures. It's pretty clear this Mina girl was way closer to the other guy. Cropping him out and posting these? That's seriously messed up. Why would someone do that? When someone likes you, you ignore them, but when they move on, you smear their new partner. Classic princess behavior. This is scary textbook competitive female tactics. I apologized to Miss Hannah yesterday. I was too harsh. I'm sorry. Add me to the apology list. Sorry. Hannah called, gushing with gratitude. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Hannah, I said. I sent the screenshots. Call the police and report her for defamation. Huh. Isn't that a bit extreme? After all, she's your childhood friend. Hannah sounded surprised. Hannah, I said firmly, I won't let her get away with hurting you like this. Okay, not long after, Mina was escorted out of class by a couple of officers for a little chat. When the three of us found ourselves in a room at the police station, the penny finally dropped for Mina. You called the police? She glared at Hannah. I reported you, Mina. I corrected her. You did something wrong. Did you really think no one would push back? I asked sarcastically. See, well, you've changed, she mumbled. Miss Mina, the officer interrupted. Based on the evidence we've received, you're being charged with defamation and causing social harm. Therefore, you will face penalties. He proceeded to list them. 800 in emotional damages to Miss Hannah, a 500 fine, and 3 days of administrative detention. Seriously, Mina's face went from perfectly sculpted composure to ghastly white faster than you can say social media influencer meltdown. She launched into her, but I'm a student plea, the classic won't go on my permanent record whine. Honestly, you'd think she'd committed grand larceny, not just, character assassination. The officer, blessed his bureaucratic heart, offered her a lifeline. Mediation, because apparently my emotional well-being was secondary to avoiding paperwork. Mina's eyes, wide and desperate, latched onto me. "SEO," she whined. "You can't do this to me." I gave her my best stone-cold, unimpressed look. "You didn't exactly not do anything to me, Mina. Remember the whole spreading vicious rumors thing?" After a dramatic pause, the kind usually reserved for soap operas, she gritted her teeth and mumbled an apology to Hannah. It was about as sincere as a politician's promise. Naturally, Hannah, following my subtle suggestions, declined the mediation. "You," Mina sputtered, her inner mean girl threatening to burst through. She then demanded a phone call because of course the world must be informed of this grave injustice. A few minutes later my phone buzzed. "Dad." "Hello, Dad. To what do I owe this pleasure?" I asked, all faux innocence. "Pleasure? What in the Sam Hill are you doing at the police station with Mina?" His voice was already reaching critical mass. "Dad," I sighed dramatically, "you wouldn't believe what Mina did. She's been spreading rumors about my girlfriend at school, accusing me of cheating. Everyone knows I'm practically a social pariah." "Okay, maybe I embellished a little. You have a girlfriend?" He seemed momentarily distracted by this bombshell. "Never mind, we'll discuss that later. Is it really that bad?" "Dad, it's a scandal. We can't even leave the dorm without getting the side eye. It's like living in a reality show, but without the prize money." "That girl," he growled. "Fine, sort it out." Old G called. "We can't have Mina detained, but we're cutting ties with her family." "Understood." Music to my ears. This was the nuclear option and it had to come from on high. I agreed to the mediation, but not before laying down my terms. 5,000 in compensation for Hannah and a public apology on the school forum and all her social media. No half measures. Mina looked like she'd swallowed a lemon, but she agreed. As we left, she grabbed my arm. "SEO," she hissed, pulling me aside. "I know you're just using her to get back at me. This time you've gone too far. Break up with her now and I'll be with you. Stop playing games." I raised an eyebrow. "Weren't you always team my brother?" I was genuinely confused. If she was also reborn, shouldn't she be aiming for him? I, she stammered, then snapped her head up.
No.
"How do you know I liked your brother?" "I never told you. Unless," her eyes narrowed. "Unless you're also reborn? Is that it?" "Oh my God," Mina muttered. "Yes, widening. You were reborn. That explains everything." Her face then morphed into a mask of dawning horror. "That means what I said." I gave her a slow, deliberate nod. "Yes, Mina, I was reborn and conveniently much earlier than you. I remember every single word you uttered before you kicked the bucket." She stumbled back, clutching at the air like it could somehow rewrite history. "I didn't mean exactly," I interrupted, cutting her off at the pass. "And I won't be clinging to you anymore. Nor should you bother clinging to me. Heaven gave me a do-over, and this time I'm finding someone who actually likes me. Not just the perks that come with me." I gave her a pointed look. "If you're so smitten with my brother, go for it. I won't stand in your way. Consider it a free pass." With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving her standing there like a statue, somewhere between stunned and on the verge of a full-blown meltdown. After that little drama, Mina vanished. I almost started to wonder if she'd spontaneously combusted from sheer embarrassment. Then June 27th rolled around, the day before the day. I paced the classroom, a nervous wreck. Tomorrow, June 28th, was the anniversary of my brother's unfortunate vehicular incident. I clenched my fists. Not this time, not on my watch. Midnight struck and I found myself knocking on my brother's dorm room door. He was a professor at a university nearby, so at least he wasn't miles away. "So, what are you doing here so late?" he asked, looking bewildered. "Brother," I said, "don't ask. I'm spending the whole day with you."
No arguments.
In my previous life, he'd been hit by a car off campus, so I shadowed him like a Secret Service agent, making sure he didn't set foot outside the university grounds. By 3 p.m., I finally let out a breath. I didn't realize I'd been holding it. The witching hour had passed. I'd done it. I changed fate, or so I thought. Just as I lowered my guard, a tricycle came barreling around the corner, heading straight for my brother. There was no time to react. My mind went blank. Could fate really not be changed? Cursing under my breath, I launched myself forward, using the ground as leverage to shove my brother out of the tricycle's path. At the same moment, another body moved in sync with mine, and boom, we were all sprawled on the ground. My brother unfortunately landed on a rock. Ah, he groaned, clutching his leg. Brother! I yelled, a wave of pure frustration washing over me. Then I noticed the other lump on the ground.
Joe.
It was Mina. She looked like she'd aged a decade in the month since I'd last seen her, and she had definitely lost weight. But I didn't have time to process that. Grabbing my phone, I dialed for an ambulance. My brother was sweating bullets from the pain. I was kicking myself. He'd insisted on going to teach, and I'd been stupid enough to think he'd be safe as long as he stayed on campus. If only I'd locked him in his dorm room. The ambulance arrived in record time, and Mina, looking like a ghost, trailed along, clinging to my brother's shirt and muttering, "It can't be, it can't be. In this life I didn't take your kidney. You won't die." The word kidney hit me like a ton of bricks. Suddenly, I remembered in my previous life, about 2 weeks after my brother's car accident, Dad had called. Mina had been diagnosed with kidney failure and needed a transplant. Like a lovesick puppy, I'd gotten tested, and wouldn't you know it, I was a match. I thought it was fate telling me to save her. But this time I hadn't donated a kidney. So was Mina wasting away because she'd been on dialysis all this time at the hospital? Thankfully, my brother was still conscious. After a thorough examination, I breathed a sigh of relief. Fractured shin, a few bruises, but nothing life-threatening. He was soon hooked up to a painkiller drip, and as his eyes fluttered open, he croaked, "Thank you, sir. I owe you my life." "It's nothing, brother," I said, trying to sound casual. "I had this crazy dream a few nights ago about you being in a car accident, and I just couldn't shake the feeling. That's why I was glued to your side. Guess it was a prophetic dream, huh?" Smooth. Mina, meanwhile, sat on a nearby bench, staring blankly at my brother's medical chart. "Joe," she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand. "Joe, why do you only have one kidney? I didn't take your kidney. How can you still only have one?" Mina mumbled, her voice laced with confusion. Intrigued, I snagged my brother's medical chart. "One kidney? Seriously? I was born with one kidney, smaller than the other," my brother explained weakly. "It kind of shriveled up as I grew, but the other one's healthy. Doesn't really affect me." Mina just stared at us blankly, then slowly crumpled to the floor, hugging herself and letting out a quiet sob, which quickly escalated into full-blown, Oscar-worthy wailing. I watched stone-faced while my brother, bless his oblivious heart, tried to comfort her. "Mina, what's wrong?" "I'm fine, really. Just a fracture. I'll heal." He probably thought she was just worried about him. He had no idea that I'd once mentioned Mina's alleged affection for him. My theory? Mina had just put 2 and 2 together. She'd probably figured out that I was the kidney donor in our past life. After all, once I'd shuffled off this mortal coil, the doctors must have given her the full autopsy report, and my totally unrelated terminal illness wouldn't have been a problem if I hadn't been running around with only one kidney. Mina had probably suspected it all along, but she'd probably seen my brother's medical report when he died and jumped to conclusions. Frankly, I had zero sympathy for her crocodile tears. Whether it was a tragic misunderstanding or not, the pain she'd inflicted on me in my previous life was very, very real. If she'd cared even a little, she would have noticed I'd been taking the same medication as her for years. But no, for 15 years of marriage, she remained ice cold. And then on my deathbed, she'd had the gall to tell me she loved my brother just to twist the knife. She suddenly lunged at me, wrapping me in a desperate hug. "Say woo, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't know. I'm so sorry." She was clinging to me like a barnacle, making it impossible to dislodge her. "If you're so sorry," I managed to grit out, "then leave me alone." My brother, bless his heart, looked utterly bewildered, but the pain meds were kicking in, and he soon drifted off to dreamland. "Say woo," Mina wailed. "I'll make it up to you. I'll be so good to you this time. Please don't leave me. Please say woo. I can't live without you." "Oh, the drama." "After you left," she continued, burying her face in my chest. "Seriously, the audacity. I realized you were essential. You were woven into the very fabric of my existence. There was no more breakfast waiting for me, she sobbed. No more fresh fruit in the fridge. My clothes didn't magically clean themselves, and the trash just sat there mocking me. She clutched my shirt like it was a lifeline. Say woo, she mumbled. I never knew the mortgage and car payments were so much. I didn't know the car needed servicing. I didn't know how to pay the bills. I can't live without you. Finally, I managed to peel her off me, dusting off my shirt with a look of pure disgust. You didn't know? I echoed. There's a lot you didn't know because you never gave me a second thought. You just saw me as a useful idiot, a walking ATM who did all the grunt work. My brother's resting, I said coldly. Leave and don't come back. When she refused to budge, I grabbed her arm and hauled her out of the room, slamming the door and locking it for good measure. It took a while, but I eventually heard her footsteps retreating. I stayed with my brother for a couple of days, then my parents arrived. His leg fracture was apparently serious enough for surgery, so he entered the wonderful world of hospital rotations. During this time, Hannah actually visited. She brought flowers and homemade bone broth. My parents and brother were charmed. She was the polar opposite of Mina. Mina was all flash and drama, always dressed like she was auditioning for a music video. Hannah was classy. On my brother's last day in the hospital, who should show up but Mina's parents and the scene they created? They literally knelt in front of me. Say woo, please save Mina, they cried, actually kowtowing. My parents were understandably horrified. They scrambled to haul Mina's parents off the floor. Oh gee, what in the world is going on? Why are you and your wife doing this? My dad asked, trying to prevent Mina's father from resuming his groveling. Mina's mother was a mess of tears. Mina has end-stage kidney failure. She's not going to make it. What? My dad's eyes went wide. Is there anything we can do to help? Oh, Dad, so predictable. I knew his bleeding heart would override any sense of self-preservation. Old Ha. Mina's father pleaded. Mina said Sewoo's tissue type is a match. Could Sewoo donate a kidney? What? My dad was flabbergasted. How could Sewoo and Mina be a match? He turned to me, his brow. Did you get tested? I let out a dry, humorless chuckle. So Mina, after her recent display of remorse, was back to playing the victim card, sending her parents to beg for my kidney. Clearly, she wasn't convinced I'd be stupid enough to fall for it again. I didn't get tested, I said casually, but I do know my tissue type matches hers. But I continued, a smirk playing on my lips. I'm not willing to give her a kidney. Mina's father's face reddened. Sewoo, don't be selfish. You'd only be losing a kidney. Mina is losing her life. I gave him a bored look. Her life has nothing to do with me. I didn't make her sick. Mina's mother, now bordering on hysterical, grabbed my arm. Sewoo, I know you've always liked Arma. If you donate your kidney, I'll make sure she marries you. Marry me? I echoed, dripping with sarcasm. Does that also include a house, a car, and a $400,000 dowry? Well, she stammered, those are just basics for a marriage, right? Mina isn't well, she'll need money for care. It's not unreasonable to ask for a little more, is it? What? My mother finally found her voice. You want my son's kidney, a house, a car, and money? The gall of you. Get out, she yelled. My son is not donating a kidney, and he certainly isn't marrying a sickly gold digger. I felt a surge of warmth towards my mother. In my previous life, after I'd secretly donated my kidney to Mina, my parents had rushed to my side. They just lost their eldest son, and now their youngest was, well, one kidney short. They aged about 10 years in a single night. I failed them so miserably. Mina's father tried one last time. Sewoo, letting you donate a kidney to Mina is doing you a favor. You've been following Mina around like a stray dog your whole life. Don't think we didn't notice. You should be honored that she'll live with your kidney. That did it. My dad finally snapped. Ji-chun, if you don't know how to speak to people, then shut your mouth. After all these years, I never thought you'd think of Sewoo like this. I'm done with you and your family. Dad, Mom, I said, pushing my brother towards the door. Let's not waste any more time on them. No, you can't leave. What about Mina? Her mother lunged, grabbing my leg. You have to give her your kidney. Let go, I said, my voice like ice, or I'll call the police. Don't say I didn't warn you. The threat of law enforcement did the trick. Mina's mother hesitated, and I wrenched my leg free, making a beeline for the exit. Summer break came and went, and Hannah and I were officially third-year university students. Internship time. We found placements at companies near each other and naturally rented an apartment together. Our days were a blur of work and graduate school prep. No way was I going back to my hometown. I was staying in the big city, making up for lost time. Hannah and I were a surprisingly effective study duo, quizzing each other and keeping each other motivated. We were a well-oiled exam-crushing machine. Then, about 5 months later, Mina reappeared. This time, she was kneeling outside my office building, refusing to leave. A crowd had gathered because who doesn't love a public spectacle? When she saw me emerge, a flicker of hope lit up her eyes. "Suwoo," she croaked, trying to stand but collapsing from the strain. Her palms were scraped and bleeding, her clothes were a mess, but she somehow managed to get back on her feet and stumbled towards me. She was a shadow of her former self. Gone was the glamorous Mina. She was gaunt, her face pale, her hair a tangled mess. "Suwoo, save me," she begged, reaching out a trembling hand. "I won't bother you and Hannah anymore. I've been good, haven't I? I haven't contacted you. I'm dying, Suwoo, please save me." Those eyes, once filled with arrogance, now clung to me with the desperation of a drowning person. I stopped a few feet away from her. "Mina, why would I sacrifice my life to save you?" "No!" she cried, shaking her head frantically. "If we're careful this time, you won't get sick. You won't die." Her voice wavered as if she didn't even believe her own words, but she kept repeating them like a mantra. "You won't die." I burst out laughing, tears stinging my eyes. After a moment, I straightened up, wiped my eyes, and looked at Mina. "Don't waste your time on me. You know it's impossible. You'd be better off looking for another kidney donor. Maybe you'll get lucky." And with that, I walked past her, not looking back. Seeing Mina in such a state did bring a twisted sense of satisfaction, but she'd already paid a price. I wasn't going to waste any more energy on revenge. September 2021. Mina's parents, bless their hearts, finally scraped together a kidney donor for her. Apparently, their house wasn't worth as much as a healthy set of organs, so they had to mortgage it, 300,000 or 400,000 you. No small change. Too little too late though. The kidney might have kept her ticking, but her other bits and bobs were already giving up the ghost. Life expectancy? Let's just say I wouldn't be planning any long-term vacations with her. Anyway, I shrugged it off. Exams were looming, and Hannah was my study buddy in crime. October rolled around, and we exchanged that "we're in this together" smirk before marching into the exam hall. Post-exams? No postmortem, thank you very much. We both took some well-deserved time off, work could wait. Hand in hand, we became tourists extraordinaire. Seaside, mountains, forests that looked like they belonged in a fantasy novel, endless grasslands. You name it, we conquered it. Honestly, it was the first time I genuinely enjoyed someone else's company. Shared experiences and all that jazz. We even ended up at Faxi Temple, hand in hand again, kneeling before Buddha like the pious little lambs we weren't. Clasped hands, the whole shebang. We prayed for good grades, obviously healthy parents because guilt, a bright future, who doesn't? And that our bond would last. I roll gratitude indeed. Fast forward to February 2022. Chinese New Year was just barely over, and I was practically vibrating with anxiety as I logged into that exam results portal. Deep breaths, Suwoo, deep breaths. Even if I failed, it wouldn't be the end of the world clicked. 389 points. Not bad. I turned to my parents, who were hovering nearby. Bless them, they couldn't understand the numbers, but they were invested nonetheless. "It's good," I said, flashing a grin. They clapped like it was their own victory. Dad, ever the pragmatist, immediately asked about Hannah. Speak of the devil, my phone rang. "See woo." Hannah shrieked down the line. "I got 383. "I got 389, I replied, trying not to sound too smug. A gentle Hannah. She was in full-on banshee mode, screaming with excitement. It was kind of hilarious. She did eventually remember my parents were within earshot and tried to tone it down, but the damage was done. We all had a good laugh. As internships wrapped up, we slithered back to campus, and guess what? Our counselor decided we were prime examples of outstanding students. and invited us to grace the graduation ceremony with our presence. Simultaneously, word trickled in that Mina had taken a leave of absence. Color me unsurprised. Fast forward to the master's graduation, because what's a graduation without a little bit of drama? I dropped to one knee and popped the question to Hannah. Cue the collective ah from our classmates and teachers. We officially became that couple. The special moment of the ceremony. End of 2025, wedding bells, white dress, the whole shebang. As we were doing the obligatory guest greeting dance, who should appear but Mina? Short hair, baggy t-shirt, jeans, the anti-A. Congratulations, she mumbled, handing me a red envelope with a faint, almost ghostly smile. I stared at her for a few seconds and it hit me I was over it. Done. Kaput. Thank you, I said genuinely. I hope you find your other half soon. Thank you, she replied. As I turned away, I heard her whisper just loud enough for me to catch it. I'll never find someone who treats me as well as you did. Well, isn't that just precious? Later, during the reception, I turned my back for a moment and Hannah, trailing her ridiculously long wedding dress, snuck up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder. One look at her, and the waterworks started. I couldn't help it. What are you crying about? She asked, wiping away my tears with the back of her hand, even though her own eyes were suspiciously shiny. Hannah, I choked out. You are the best gift heaven has given me. She agreed, whispering in my ear as she hugged me back. And you are mine too. Barf. Just kidding. Mostly.